Well, colleagues, let's start. Today, within the framework of our session dedicated to agrotech, we'll discuss the topic linked, first of all, with providing feed for our industry. We'll speak about this, and we'll speak with our speakers about the trends, possibilities which can be open in different industries. We'll speak about cattle, about industrial aquaculture, and about husbandry. We'll speak about different projects in Skolkovo. Today we have very good guests. I will represent the colleagues. We'll start with Vladislav Panarin. He is the Deputy CEO, National Poultry Union, and also Denis Petrov, Gipro Biosynthesis company, which produces feed for agriculture, for food industry. Today with us we have also Vladimir Mazanov, Executive Director, National Association of Industrial Aquaculture Enterprises. Or maybe you all know Natalia Chernysheva. She is a Business Development Director, Skolkovo Foundation. She gives life to all our startup projects, which we will discuss also today. And before I start the talk about feed production, I would like to give you some ideas which are linked with modern agriculture in Russia, how modern agriculture in Russia are developing, the most important trends which we saw industry, what challenges we'll face in the next future. And this topic of challenges will be very important for us, linked with feed. This is a very important issue. Agriculture is one of the industries which over the last 10-15 years show maximum high growth rate. Average annually growth rate over 15 years made up about 15%. Of course, we had also 2010. It was not a simple year for us. We had a drop in production because of natural disasters. By over last year's 15% increase, and this is even higher than GDP growth. I think this dynamics is very good, and over this last 15 years, we now have export-oriented model of development. We went away from import. We also went towards import substitution. We all go to shops and we can see a lot of domestic products, goods, but also industry is developing actively for the export. For example, the volume of export last year made up more than 37 billion of rubles, and our industry is in the top of largest industries of Russian Federation regarding export volume, and we are now, for example, even ahead of weapon export. And this now we have quite a lot of demands regarding the level of competitiveness. Speaking about this dynamics, of course, there were some key things. For example, private initiative. Agriculture, unlike other industries of Russian industries, has a lot of private share, and that's why this industry develops so well. The second part is a systematic state support, and we always use available financing. Now, even in spite of growth of the key rate, the growth of loans don't exceed 5%. And some investment projects are financed at 3 and 2%. This is a good thing. We all know the inflation rate, and for money, for our it means that money practically is free for us. And the third item is very also important. We also could use all available technologies which exist in the world. Here we can speak about genetics and selection, seeds, plant protection, equipment, and we accelerate all this good mess. We use the best what was developed in the world. And also we have a lot of challenges which we faced this year, 2022, in spite of the fact that the industry shows quite a good dynamics this year regarding the main parameters. For example, milk and the growth of production is about 4%. The same poultry, and also speaking about pig industry, it's also the same. But regarding the harvest this year, practically we have a very good forecast regarding grain and oil cultures. The situation is good. Export is growing, and milk, for example, by 17% regarding poultry. I think also 50%. Dynamics is very good. The key challenge which we deal with is the break of support chain, and this good mass increase was provided by availability of wide technologies from the whole world. Unfortunately, now these opportunities are restricted to some degree, of course. But the topics which we'll be discussing now, the feed production, is becoming even more relevant. Russia is dependent on import of the main feed. Amino acids, 50%. In Russia, we have producers of amino acids, but still there are some nuances, and the colleagues also will mention about it, I think, as well. The feed additives and microelements, more than 90%. Vitamins, also the share here was closing to 90%. So, generally speaking, for dynamically developing industry, the need for high quality feed, which provide good growth for products, is a key story. That's why it's the fundamental for us, and we should discuss all this. And first of all, it's a significant industry, which is animal husbandry. This is briefly the introduction. And now I'd like to give the floor for the first speaker, Vladislav Panarin. He represents National Poultry Union, Deputy CEO. What about the situation in your industry, the situation with feed? So what challenges and risks do you have? What opportunities do you have? Good afternoon, dear colleagues. The industry continues to develop and continues to develop in the direction of covering our own demand to the full, and export development over the last 4 years. We have about 8% of growth, and last year also 8% of growth. And also, as Artyom says, export is really growing to China, to the Persian countries, African countries. Export is being diversified, which increases its sustainability. But now we have some uncertainty, of course, which leads to the fact that we can't understand to the full how we can provide ourselves with the best examples of technology with some feed and breed. We cover grain. We have grain, and this is the basics for feed, but we have amino acids also and additives, which usually we import it. And now we need to understand that without them we can't reach the better growth and better indicators and weight increasing, and also it means that this can lead to decline of volume production. We have some volume of amino acids which we are importing, and practically fully we import vitamins, and this is a very serious challenge for us. In spite of the fact that we can import a lot from China, a lot from Brazil, but still there are some things which are delivered for example, methionine was delivered from Belgium and Japan, and this is not really optimistic. There is some uncertainty. And it means that import substitution regarding production of amino acids and vitamins is crucial for us. But this is also very, scientific. It needs a lot of expenses. Without the state support, we can't do a lot of things. We can't make a progress here, because besides investment, because scientific achievements, we need also an access to a big quantity of power and gas to produce amino acids. Also, we need an access to technologies, primary strains of producers, which were all imported also. That's why we need this sufficient support from the government. We need to have private initiative regarding this, and this private initiative could help us to cover Russian part of this market. And the market is free, because the share of the import is very huge. It's huge, really, and regarding some elements, it's full. It's only import. Okay, Vladislav, I just want you to ask a question. In 2017, we had a program regarding feeds, and how is this program working? Does it give you any support? Well, the program gives us support, but still this is a very long cycle of execution of investment projects, because we had some investment projects on amino acids, as I remember, and before the realization, nobody reached any steps of realization. But now also we have the production in Belarus. Belarus National Biotechnological Corporation, which produces methionine, lysine, and threonate and tryptophan. 40,000 tons of lysine and some threonine and tryptophan. In our country, we have main producers. This is amino acid factory, for example. Generally speaking, also Volsky, org synthesis, I think very big producers. So here we have a lot of work to do. What about priorities? Can you mention about 3 key priorities regarding import substitution for your industry? The 3 key directions, maybe groups of feed, which you can see a very critical situation, challenges vitamins production, The first one, lysine production, because still we have 1/3 of import ingredients. Methionine production, tryptophan, threonine, because these are the basic amino acids without which there is no any weight increase. Chlorine is important, the source of B4 vitamin. I think mostly this. Thank you very much. Colleagues, do you have any questions to our speaker, maybe comments? I have a question. Maybe even several questions. The first question, speaking about the industries of agriculture, animal husbandry, poultry, where do you see the biggest risk regarding import substitution? Maybe we won't have this import substitution on time. The second question, you also spoke about the key products. But these products are mostly relevant for creating production of large players. Can you see some maybe things where our startups can make efforts? Maybe not only feeds, but maybe some areas of import substitution. Poultry, where we work, this is mostly industrial and large scale, and we need a lot of volume here. But any production, this is initially this is always startup, any production, and in any direction it can be a startup, because any business idea, this is initially someone's business idea, someone's startup. If a startup is a small production, maybe it's like this. It's not startup, maybe, but the idea is of one scale. The idea is of another scale. But there can be startups also in large projects. Also, regarding what about your second question? Speaking about industry, where do you see the risks? In what types of industry? Maybe poultry farming or animal husbandry? Actually, the biggest risks are declining of production volume and the availability of breeding. It can influence on this, and this is also large scale, and it's high technology and very a lot of science it needs, and breed herd, pedigree. So also startups. Of course, there is an opportunity to substitute some components for equipment. And mostly, again, this is imported. And it's imported from very developed countries. That's why we have a lot of different possibilities. We can have also the components for equipment, so we can produce. But the main risks, if regarding equipment, we have some time to think about. But this question of uncertainty regarding delivering some critical categories like vitamins, amino acids, incubation, eggs, and eggs not only of final generations, but the first generations, parent generations. Here, of course, there is some anxiety. There is some. It's quite alarming. Okay, I will comment on this briefly. If we are speaking on not only feed topics, here I can give you some figures. We have not a simple story here. We analyzed for us here all this, how much import we had regarding unfriendly countries, about 50, and the figures are quite sufficient. We Speaking about agriculture equipment, we have internal production, but regarding import 70%, production equipment in processing industry 70%, packages 53%, spare parts 62%, ingredients and about 68%. Here, of course, we have a lot of things to do to realize our projects, because the situation where we are now about the break of supply chain, it will be quite long term. Here we have a lot of possibilities. Speaking about feed, of course, Vladislav mentioned this. I also can see a problem with vitamins. Yes, there is an opportunity now to deliver from other countries, from China and Southeastern Asia, but there are also some risks. Of course, now we can see possibilities here to develop business domestically. It can be drivers for us. And now we're working in, from Torque regarding equipment. I can see that Russian food enterprises now they take a look at our enterprises. But we have technologies, we have opportunities, maybe not in all directions, but we can still focus on them. Vladislav, thank you very much. It was my comment as a moderator. I would like to come back to our speakers. I would like to give the floor to Denis Petrov. Maybe, Denis, you will speak about this as well, about the main problems regarding the feed, outsourcing of food industry. Thank you very much. Can I see my presentation? The company Gipro Biosynthesis produces additives to feed, not feed, but additives to feed. Colleagues, please, can I see my presentation now? Okay. Now, I would like to look at the issue a little bit wider. Now, we have this problem in the country, but if we look into the future, speaking about cultivating land, so the volume of cultivating land is limited. Of course, we can cut trees, but still then it will also end. Intensification of agriculture will continue, but again, it has some reverse side. We pay for this. A big price, antibiotic resistance, ecology problems, and we can't develop agriculture without these problems. Accordingly, as an example, our next speaker will speak about fish. Yes, I will speak about fish. Okay, that's why I want to give you an example, speaking about fish flour. So fish flour, it's a thing which can be produced from anything. For example, we can gather all alive from the bottom, then it's grinded, dried, and then we can have fish flour. The demand for fish flour is growing because population is growing, everybody wants fish. And you can see the production of fish flour is declining. Why? Because there are quotas, and because now we don't have anything to fish. Because if we fish anything tomorrow, we'll have nothing to fish. That's a good example which shows that we already got to some problems. We need some new alternative sources of protein which could not depend on sea, land, or the sun. And as one of such alternatives, our company GBC produces such a technology where you can see, you can present, you can think about animal husbandry, but instead of big animals or poultry, you grow microorganisms. So they live in some reservoir or jar, it's closed, and we create ideal, perfect conditions for them, the same as for animal husbandry. And then they feed gas. And these are special microorganisms which can produce energy from gas, and they can grow. But if we want an animal, we need a lot of mass. But here, they grow by days, by hours. It depends on your conditions, how perfect they are. So on the one hand, we deliver gas, create comfortable conditions for them, and on the second part, we have biomass, which can be sent to feed purposes, or ideally in the future, it can be oriented to food. So, what I would like to pay your attention to. The first one, this is safety. We know that we eat meat or chicken. This is safe for nature, but it's not. Agriculture, it's not safe at all for our environment. If we replace some part of cows and cultivated land with reservoirs or jars, maybe it would be better. It's first of all closed cycle. There is no waste, and secondly, they take not so much space. Thirdly, it's continuous production. When we grow chickens or fish or somebody else, we need a small animal, then it grows. But we here launch the cycle. Bacteria, biomasses grow, and then step by step we pick it continuously, but still they continue to grow. We are not dependent on any natural disasters, the sun, rain, and so on. Stable product all the time, continuously. And thirdly, scaling up. Food safety, which we speak about, it's also an issue of scale up. For example, we can have production, and when we start to scale up, so now even in the West, there are a lot of different alternative proteins, but very often these projects have problems not regarding market, but mostly supply. The problem is where they can take raw material in, a big volume. For example, 100,000 tons, it's a big factory already. It's very difficult to find raw materials for it. When we have the essential component, the main component is gas, the question of enterprise scaling up, this is just the thickness of the pipe. And then we have the same quality, the same products all the time. So what do we have? Our flagship product is called Dream Feed. It's our trademark, and it's not a feed, it's feed additive, because it has a lot of vitamins and protein, because there is too much protein and nobody can eat it directly. So you can add only 40% of this. For example, for fish, they need more, but for small animals, they need also more. For minnow, they need more, especially vitamins. Vitamin B, this is a side effect of metabolism of this bacteria. We checked safety. We made the research in all institutions, and Rossellkhovnadzor already gave us a certificate for this product, and I really hope that this year we'll start producing of a big factory, and then we'll have this product at the market in 2025.
So basically that's it, all I wanted to say, but I have a spare slide. It is about the future. Why should we feed the fish with the protein, the fish that will be turned into food itself? Why should we do this? Why we can't just feed on the fish itself without the protein? Well, this is about the concentration of proteins. There are different types of proteins that exist in a form of powders. If we take a close look at the products that we buy from the supermarkets, then we will see that there are a lot of different additives that stem from the protein concentration. So here we are talking about the product of the future. We are talking about the replacement for the protein concentration additives that are smarter to produce. Okay, yes, thank you. So, dear colleagues, if you have any comments, then please go ahead. If not, then we could probably go to the next speaker. So, Denis, thanks a lot. And I would like now to give the floor to Vladimir Mazanov from the National Association of Industrial Aquaculture. We continue our discussion on fish. Vladimir, the floor is yours. Right, thank you. Good afternoon. I'd like to comment on what we've already heard. I presume that we will come to a story from a fantasy. So when we just get a pill or take a pill and feel full, right? Well, to respond to that, I believe that this is indeed a very far future of ours. So perhaps we will just indeed eat something concentrated to feel full, but when it comes to some steak or any meat or anything, that would be more for the purposes of entertainment rather than just digestion and nutrition. Okay, so I'd like to come back to the topic of fish. So we have such a feature of fish and fish feed as a palatability. So sometimes when we have to replace a fish flour, this flour becomes less interesting for some species of fish. So one has to be very careful about additives. Obviously, we can't live without additives right now. We do have the limited resources of fish, and obviously, we cannot satisfy the needs of all the aquacultures just with the standard and traditional fish flour, obviously. So, if we turn back to the topic of fish feed, one needs to understand that there are two main categories of it. The first one is for the species of fish that feed on some plant-based diet. So they take the vitamins from the plant-based feed. And we've learned how to make them. We've been doing this for quite a long time. If maybe some of you don't know about it, but Russia, that was part of the Soviet Union, was growing 250,000 tons of fish. And we could exceed this amount only in 2019. So 95% of the Soviet fish was the carbs. So we are quite okay with carbs. Now we are talking about the feed for predators fish, such as trout and salmon, as well as some other species, such as sturgeon. So actually, when it comes to sturgeon, we do not produce a lot of them, but mainly we are talking about salmon and trout. When it comes to these species, we produce about 120,000 tons, 40% of salmon and 60% of trout. So last year we bought 171,000 of the imported fish feed for this particular fish species. So unfortunately, this is the real figure. Then, when it comes to our local production, it can provide only for the 20 or 25,000 tons, which accounts for about 20% of the whole volume needed. And so mainly, we have like 4 production sites or production facilities that produce this amount. One of them are quite well known. This is Rim Korm, which ensures the high quality. And there is another production in Tver. This is the feed titled Aqua Rex. Why have we chosen the imported feed rather than producing our own? Well, the thing is that when it comes to salmon, it is very important to ensure the quality of the feed. It is very important to make sure that the ingredients of the feed can provide for the weight that is needed for the fish. And here we take a very close look at the conversion coefficient of the feed. When we need some particular weight for a salmon, for example, then we need to abide by the coefficient of 1.2. Unfortunately, the local feed produced in Russia doesn't satisfy these or do not satisfy these requirements. Unfortunately, we don't get the weight that we should get for a fish. Well, you do understand that in any aquaculturing, up to 70% of our expenses are for the feed. And well, when we are talking about just some percentage point of this coefficient, like 0.1 or 0.2, then it can save on expenses, and this saving will be quite significant. Unfortunately, this is a feature of the national feeds produced in Russia. That's why we were feeding on the imported feeds. Well, unfortunately, all these feeds were from so-called non-friendly countries, such as Denmark, Netherlands, and others. Now all this supply has stopped. The companies not only left the market, but they also prohibited their branches across the whole world to work in Russia. So if we go back to the question of import, then, yeah, I've already mentioned that locally we produce about 20% of the feed needed. Now let's talk about the potential. In March, the Agency for Fishing in Russia organized a meeting on the feeding of the fish stocks. And there is a political decision to compensate or reimburse about 20% of capex for the building of new production facilities. So now we've got applications for the building of production facilities for about 300,000 feed tons. So we are talking a couple of years here. So we can start the production in 2024 probably. And during these 2 years, we have to somehow replace the missing feed with some reserves or maybe some products from some other countries. For example, we can get it from Belarus because indeed, they have the capacity to produce about up to 100,000 tons. The supply has already started this year. We have high hopes regarding this, but unfortunately the quality is not great yet. So if we combine our local capacity as well as the capacity from Belarus, then we can probably indeed close the gap when it comes to feed for trouts. When it comes to salmons, well, still there are some imported goods from abroad, from Norway, for example, and Norway continues to supply the feeds to us. But the trend is that in the upcoming future, this probably can be cut down as well. So, if we talk about the possible import, this could come from Turkey, Iran, from China. So these three countries, each of these countries indeed faces some challenges. For example, the feed from Iran are low energy and low efficient. When it comes to feed from China, the logistics is a very lengthy and difficult as well as expensive process. Regarding Turkey, they haven't started exporting yet. So to conclude, I'd like to sum up and say that we need to manufacture and produce the high quality feeds or sufficient quality feeds. And the best option here is to involve some international partner with the relevant experience. I do hope that we will get this opportunity in the near future. We are working on this. Okay, thank you very much. And now I'd like to give the floor to Natalia to follow on the fish feed topic. So Natalia is very experienced in pitching. So Natalia, you have just about, 3 minutes. Okay, thank you very much. So we are uploading my slides. While we are doing this, I'd like to say the following. What we see now in the world is the development of the fish accelerators. And we haven't got yet anything in Russia. And so this year, we'd like to start such a program to work across 3 key areas. First, on the catch, there are some solutions regarding this. The second block is about the processing, logistics, and retail. Here we can address some particular tasks in the field of fish when it comes to the transportation in accordance with the cold chain technologies. And also we see some great potential when it comes to packaging and the development of packages. Today we haven't touched upon it yet, but as we see, the packaging now is one of the fields where we face some difficulties because of the current situation. And the third block is about aquaculture. We've talked about it a lot today. This is about the feeds, veterinary technologies, and also the raising and producing of some new aquacultures, such as like white shrimps, etc. There's still a room for development here. So we'd like to start this program and launch this program together with the key players in the industry. Currently, we're discussing it with our partners, and we are waiting for the partners in this respect, those who stand ready to participate. The conditions of the participation could be adjusted on an individual basis, depending on the partners that will get into Skolkovo. We have an extensive experience in the field of such programs implementation. We have some experience with Uralchem when it comes to chemistry, and also we had a wide program with Rosagra the previous year. And here I would like just to show the slide with my contact details and the ones of my colleague. Currently, we are developing this program and would be happy to talk to potential partners in this respect. That was all, if I should be brief. Okay, Natalia, thank you very much. Indeed, 40 minutes is not enough for such a discussion. I'm not sure whether we can still continue or we are quite pressed on time, or should we sum up just in 1 minute? Well, I think that we still have about 5 minutes, but the next session here starts at 12 p.m. 15. Okay, thanks, Natalia. So, dear colleagues, if you have any questions from our audience, please make them very brief and concise, and also the request for the speakers to also answer very briefly. Okay, the first question from the audience. Good day, dear colleagues. My name is Lena Levina, and I'm from Bonaco company. We are doing industrial technologies. The question is, currently, because of the Federal Law 495. Is it really relevant according to this law? This is a law on biological security and safety. We cannot use any antibiotics for the purposes of prevention, so this usage is very much limited. Is it relevant for you as large producers? Can large producers replace some medicines when it comes to feeding, or it is not interesting for you? Well, this is indeed a large topic for us. I just say briefly that the government's position, the state's position, is to enforce and limit the usage of the antibiotics. So the position is very strict here, but there are a lot of details, and perhaps we could discuss it a bit later. Okay, thank you. Next question. Oh, Vladimir wanted to comment a little bit. I wanted to add that indeed this is a relevant topic. When it comes to aquacultures, we are mostly feeding on the imported feeds. And so when it comes to some additives, if there is any additive in a feed, then it is recognized as a medication. So absolutely different rules apply. Okay, next question. Dear colleagues, thanks a lot for this interesting session. This is indeed really topical and relevant. My question goes to Natalia. Natalia, as you know, the SKOLKOVO Foundation focuses on creation of favorable conditions and ecosystem to develop entrepreneurship in different fields. I'm a commercial director of one of the companies. We do engineering solutions to develop complex electronic systems. We do topology, implementation, and diagnostics. When it comes to the input substitution, we also chose the agricultural field. Okay, I'm very sorry. Could you get down to the question? Yes, okay, sorry. The question is, Natalia, what are the conditions for us to become the resident of the accelerator? What are the measures of support and how we can do it? Okay, so dear colleagues, to become the participants of our accelerator, it's not obligatory for you to be the resident of SKOLKOVO. All the startups that are in accordance with the topic of our accelerator are welcome. When it comes to the support measures, this year we've introduced grants up to 7 million rubles to the winners, prize winners of the accelerators, according to some certain conditions. So to get 7 million rubles, then you need to be our resident. Can we have a meeting with you? Yes, right, without any problems. I'll be happy to talk about all this, about the program as well as the cooperation with the SKOLKOVO Foundation. Okay, thanks a lot, dear colleagues. Thanks, dear participants. I think it's very important to understand that the government, the state, recognizes the problems. The business knows what it needs, what issues should be addressed when it comes to import substitution. We, as an association, are ready to act as an intermediary between the foundation and the startups. We stand ready to help and support. And so, actually, Gazprom is looking for some solutions connected to overhead gas, so maybe this could be kind of an inspiration for you. Thank you, dear colleagues.
ВК-звонки доступны везде и без ограничений, в 4К и с активным шумоподавлением. Будьте всегда на связи в ВК-звонках.
Встречайте приложение ВК-клипы. Удобный видеоредактор. Уникальные маски и эффекты. И стильные фильтры для обработки. Еще быстрее, проще, вертикальнее. Теперь в отдельном приложении ВК-клипы. Место встречи талантов.
Привет! Классно шьешь, варишь, печешь и вообще что-то производишь в Москве? Тогда сейчас самое время поверить в то, что ты делаешь, заявить о себе и занять свое место на рынке, пока другие не заняли. Смотри, это твоя дверь в новый мир. Открывай и узнай, чем мы можем тебе помочь. Москва-24 для бизнеса. Давай с нами.
Журнал «Эксперт» — это российский и международный бизнес, общественно-политические процессы, аналитика и прогнозы, рейтинги и интервью. Специальные условия на подписку на сайте expert.ru. «Эксперт» — настоящий деловой журнал.
Сделан из старых забытых вещей, из ночи и дня без обмана, из порванных струн и разбитых идей, из холода и тумана. Ты соткан из дыма и верных друзей, и разных незыблемых истин, из горя и радости, света теней. А может, из чьей-нибудь мысли. Ты сделан из старых ненужных вещей, оставленных кем-то на входе. Ты сделан из очень хороших людей, и тебе это очень подходит.
МТС Стартап Хаб. Работа